In West Woodlawn, where dozens of homes sit vacant and abandoned, 5 black real estate entrepreneurs have purchased and will now redevelop 11 vacant lots.
Today, they broke ground near 63rd and Evans. CBS 2's Sade Gray was there.
These 5 black real estate developers, Derek Walker, Keith Lindsay, Bonita Harrison, Dejon Robinson, and Sean Jones, have created a movement called Buyback the Block.
One day we actually sat down in Bonita's office at one of her properties, and we were doing the numbers on how many properties each of us have done, and just looked at how we looked as a whole. Because we always did things individually, but when we saw how we look as a whole, it kind of opened our eyes.
It's a call to action to put black ownership into black communities.
I remember walking through neighborhoods with vacant lots and abandoned buildings and being scared of those buildings because you never knew what was going to happen.
Through the Cook County Land Bank, which works to reduce and return vacant land and abandoned buildings back into reliable and sustainable communities, they're able to renovate the lots and put 3 flat buildings into their neighborhoods.
We know that people in the area, they want to live in the area. They just want good housing stock, and they want a safe place for their children.
During the groundbreaking near 63rd and Evans, Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle says vacant lots like these are all over the city in black and brown communities.
They represent decades of systemic failure. Failure to prioritize our residents who've been most impacted by predatory lending and housing discrimination.
Buyback the Block has purchased and will redevelop 11 lots. 5 of them are right here. All 11 are within 2 blocks.
When we look at majority of our culture, generational renters, and understanding that less than 30% of us are owners in a 100% black community, and given the gift of ownership, so now you're vested in the land, I mean, that's the greatest thing that warms my heart.
We need our black dollars to circulate amongst each other by creating jobs, creating wealth, and everything circulates like this, so we can have the same things in our neighborhoods that are in other neighborhoods that we do not have.
Reporting in West Woodlawn, Sade Gray, CBS 2 News.
Well, Sean Jones, great to talk to you, and I'm excited today. We have a lot to talk about.
All right, I'm glad to be here, man. Big Lawrence in the house.
So when I first met you, you had just finished your first building on the Woodlawn development. Mm-hmm. And it was really cool because I was out of town, but I know they had it was ABC News or someone that came there. And there was, I think it was 5 of you that had all done a building, and you had completely changed that block. Before you guys, it was all just vacant lots and it wasn't much going on. Mm-hmm. And now it's this beautiful block. How did that happen that you guys all came together?
Well, we're basically all developers in the neighborhood, have all grown up on the south side, and we decided as rehabbers that we wanted to do something really big. And there's a term out here, or a slogan, buy back the block, and that's kind of catchy in our neck of the woods or neighborhood. And that we wanted to do something really big, buy back the block, and put something out there that people were going to recognize and like, wow, this is really inspirational and changing. So we contacted the Cook County Land Bank, told them what our plans were, and they were excited. And we got our funds together and purchased the lots. We bought 11 lots, did basically half of the development in the first round, and we basically share best practices with one another. So, and shared resources, because none of us had the experience of actually developing, but we did have a ton of rehabs under our belt. So that allowed us to learn from each other as we got through the process. And once we got the actual foundation in, which is really the new part of the construction that we didn't have the experience in, and the utilities and the structure up, then it was basically a rehab from there. So we're excited we got it done, and a lot of naysayers, but we still pulled through, and it was a successful development.
So every one of you guys had all just been doing rehabs. That was all for all of you, your first new development.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. I feel like it's so interesting when I have a lot of clients that are either they do new construction or they do rehab. It's normally one or the other. And one thing, when I first started in the business, I thought rehabs was the way forward. I was like, it's basically new construction, but it's cheaper. And now I've completely changed my mind. So I feel like for the sales side, new construction, it's much more efficient use of space. Renters prefer it, so the numbers are better. Buyers prefer it because it's new. And then for you guys, I'd love to hear your opinion, but for me, it seems like when you do rehabs, you never know. You have ideas, and then you start seeing how much you have to do. Maybe it's more than you thought. The scope of work increases.
It's always more than you thought.
Exactly. How can you plan a budget?
Yes.
Whereas new construction, once you have the lot, you kind of know roughly what it's going to cost. You have your scope of work. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. It's just one of those things like those who are in new construction always tell you, man, I wish I had done new construction either first or done that faster and getting out of the rehab game. I've actually made a commitment to myself that I don't want to do any more rehabs anymore. I want to stay in new construction and go beyond that into commercial. But yeah, I mean, rehabbing is a lot of unforeseen things. I would tell when I was training people on how to do rehabs, I would tell them, look, I can't see behind the walls. You can't see behind the walls. You're not Superman. But you're never going to know what you're going to need in that project. You can plan for it. Like, hey, we can say that we're tearing out the floors, but you don't know what's under the floors. And hey, we got termites. We've got a bad joist here. And, that's $2,000-$3,000 here, and that stuff adds up. So
why is it now you've done both? Is it easier to do rehab? Is that why I feel like most people that just do rehabs, they're almost scared to do new construction?
Well, it's kind of like commercial versus residential. I think it's the money part. That's probably the biggest thing. The numbers are typically a lot bigger in new construction. And, on the surface, it may seem that rehabbing is an easier an opportunity to get in because you technically don't need as much money to buy that than buying and building a new development. So a rehab, hey, I can buy this house for $35,000 and only have to put $35,000 in. I can get my credit cards together to do that, or I can borrow a little bit of money. New construction, out the door, there's several $100,000 in. So, a lot of people probably can't wrap their mind around, well, where am I going to get that amount of money, or even the experience behind that.
That's true. As soon as the budget gets bigger, I feel like the risks get bigger too.
Yeah.
So,
but technically, it is technically because it is more money. But again, you have less variables in that. So in my mind, and what I've recognized is that, you're able to plan better. But again, this probably also comes from experience too. So had I had someone walk me through that in the beginning, then I would have definitely recognized it and probably got out of it faster.
So can I ask, you all kind of, you said you shared best practices. So you were sharing like maybe architectural things like that. But what about financing? Did you all do you figured out your own financing separately?
Yeah, so that was kind of collab too. Since we did put it out there to the marketplace and we got so much like recognition, and we had lenders actually coming to us like, hey, we want to potentially fund this deal or get you guys financing. So that ended up working out. We got separate loans, but the lender came to us as a group like, hey, we're going to fund this project, but we're going to qualify you individually for it.
Because the great thing about that is you're all helping each other. Because if it was just one of you on an empty block,
correct,
it's not as good. But you're all basically being each other's comps, and you're making the area better. So
it worked from that. But even before that, most lenders aren't lending to new developers or someone who hasn't done any new development. So that also, because we all hadn't done any new development, we're coming to the table, as definitely newbies, but we're coming together as a group that's done several hundred rehabs. So that gave the lender confidence, and to know that we were working and sharing best practices, that gave them comfort to know, hey, these guys are going to be able to pull this project together.
And the timing was good, because I feel like you had done it, like if you were doing it, if you'd started maybe 6 to 9 months later, rates had gone up a lot, financing had got a lot tighter, so you kind of proved the concept.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
which is I'm going through I'm doing my first new development in Pilsen. Okay, and it's been really fun for me because I've been on the other side where I'm helping people like you sell the properties, and it's been really fun. I thought that I was doing it I was kind of the money guy, so I was doing it with our mutual friend Jorge, George, And I thought he was going to take care of everything. And I think he's a great guy. I think he wanted me to learn myself. So he's like, okay, you got to get this zoning change. You got a Zoom call with the city and he's the attorney. And I'm like, I've actually got to do a bit more work than I thought. So I have such a new appreciation for just the amount of moving parts. And the one thing that I got from him was I helped raise the funds, but the lender we used had a relationship with him. They knew he was building, so he's been doing it a long time. So that made it much easier. But even with him as the builder and us putting down a lot of money, it was still really difficult because that was just what we're just finishing now. So that was just when we started development, was when the rates were up almost at the highs, and lending was becoming much tighter. So it was tough, but we're nearly there.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Well, I'm sure it probably wasn't as tough as if you guys were doing like a major gut rehab on the project. Like I think that would have still been tougher than the new development where you're pretty much doing project management work.
Yes.
In what you're doing, you're not, figuring out how to redesign this wall or this room here, or dealing with stuff behind walls that you just don't see.
Well, that's so true, because when we spoke yesterday, I was in the area in Woodlawn. I drove past you, right? We were on the phone. And I was going to see a building that was for sale, and I have a guy interested in buying it, and they had started a rehab with a hard money loan, I think 18 months ago. And we came in, and all they've done is the framing, and they've done a bit of electrics. And we walk in the bottom unit, and it's got half a foot of water because there's no sump pump or whatever it is. And they obviously ran out of money, and they're desperate. And the broker called me, and she said, "Listen, we'll accept any offers because they're over the when you go over the 12 months with the hard money, things get really expensive." And it gave me. I always like to see that in the sense of, it's good to remember that it's not easy. And I feel like too many people watch HGTV and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to do a rehab. It's easy." And there's just so many moving parts. And if you don't have your operation buttoned up, don't do hard money. It's one thing if you have friends and family and you pool your money, and then if the project goes over, at least it sucks, but you're not getting killed on the fees. And these hard money lenders, a few years ago, I partnered with a rehabber, and it was before COVID, and then when COVID came, I don't know if he uses an excuse or he was having some problems before, and then that just exemplified all of them. And then he ended up, it was an absolute debacle, and he declared bankruptcy and lost the money. And it was such a good learning experience because he was trying to leverage himself with hard money, but he didn't have a smooth operation. That's why when I look at you, it's so impressive. You're just banging out these projects. Once you start the foundation, 4 months later we're selling the building. It's crazy. Like the timeline to go from foundation to finish in 4 months, it's crazy.
Unique. No, I'm just joking.
No, but it really is, Sean. I feel like you're just so fast. And even the last one we closed on, I remember we were about 2 or 3 weeks out, and we were negotiating with a buyer, and I said, "Okay, we're going to be finished." You had said at the end of the month we'll be finished, and they said, "Well, there's no way he'll be finished then." Because they flew out, they saw there's no way. And then I remember when we finished, I got professional photos and I sent them to him, and he's like, "Well, I'll eat my words." That was pretty amazing.
Wow, you didn't tell me that.
Yeah. So
wow, I'm impressed. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
So are you just like, what makes you able to build a whole building and not cut any corners and do it so quickly? What do you think it is?
I am very in love with my processes, so I'm always looking for I call them key frustrations in my projects as I'm going through. So and there's going to be problems with everything or at some point, and I like to understand what they are and create a solution for them immediately and implement it into my process going forward. So like. Obviously, I am building them pretty fast, and I've so when I get the structure up, an example, I basically have my mechanical guys lined up. So right when the framer is practically done with the third floor, my HVAC guy is already in there on the first floor putting in duct work. Once he's up on the second floor, I got my plumber right in behind him on the first floor / second floor. And then my electrician is coming in right after that once everybody kind of gets up to practically the third floor. Obviously, it's a lot of chaos. And and you got to have it managed correctly. You got to have the guys being able to communicate with each other. So a lot of it is relationships within the process or within the project with the guys being able to talk through issues. Hey, this guy's putting his lumber over here, or he left his ladders over there because it's chaotic. But they all understand that the bigger goal is to help Sean get to the finish line, and to help them get to the finish line so they can get paid. But the bigger part is to help me get to the finish line so I can find more projects so we can get and make more money.
Well, I'm so glad you said that about relationships, because I feel like that comes up in almost any aspect of this business. And one thing I've noticed with people who struggle to keep timelines is they're just waiting on vendors. So like, I can't get hold of this plumber. He can't come for 3 weeks. And then you're just sitting and waiting for 3 weeks and nothing's happening. So obviously you have really good relationships with all the subcontractors to get them in on time.
Do have good relationships. I have side conversations and meetings with them. Like, what are you working for? Like, I dig deep with my contractors. Probably a lot of people don't do that, and then maybe they think that that's unnecessary. But if I understand their whys, or, what they're working on, or I can help them with resources, help them get what they want to get, then they're more likely to help me get to what I want to get to, just finishing the project and making money and helping them make money.
I love that. So that comes to you're very detail orientated. And I saw a building yesterday with a developer on Vernon, so in the area.
Okay. And
it was okay. And we were walking through and we were talking, and he said it wasn't rented yet, so we were kind of looking at the numbers, and it was okay. And he said, this building, the style reminds me of something 5 years ago. It wasn't, because I was telling him about your work and I showed him some photos of Evans. I said, we just closed on this. This is the kind of contemporary style I like. And it comes down to you being very detail orientated. You're not just putting in any fixtures and doing any finishes. You've obviously taken a lot of care to think about it. Another thing he said, we're in the master bedroom at the back, and it's got this tiny window, and we're on the third floor, we're on the top floor. It just seems so dark. And then look at yours, like you have these huge windows, it's very light. You don't have any wasted space in your floor plan. Like you really maximize the space. And that really, I love that. One of the things that I'm most impressed with you, Sean, is your attention and your care to the little details that make all the difference. Because when you're getting tenants in, how are you going to maximize the top rent? You have to get people that love these little details, and then they're going to pay the top rent. And then how are you going to get the top sales price? Well, you're going to get the top sales price because you're maximizing the rent. So a lot of these people, I think a lot of people in construction, they think that as long as the main things of the house are, solid foundation, the roof's good, the siding's good, they're not thinking about those little details. But I think that's the details that matter. And it sounds like,
Yep. And I kind of incorporated that when I was doing rehabs. So I had, three things that I felt will basically get my buyers or someone to purchase or rent a property that I was working on. One is my exterior has to look a certain way. So when you look at my building from the outside, you're like, dang, what is that? Or who built that? Or, man, that is really nice. The other thing is that I have to give you a wow factor when you open up the door. So I would put accent wall in front of the door, or the fireplace is in eye distance, or visual, you can see it when you open the door, something to pull you into the property. And then I'll give you one more to actually seal the deal. Maybe that is another accent wall, or the way I did the kitchen, something to make you like, okay, now I'm in here. Now I just need to see how big the bedrooms are, and I'm sold. So that's kind of the mindset that I'm thinking of when I'm putting this together. So obviously with the 3 units, I can't do all of that, but I'm definitely looking for the meticulous things or the wow factors. And then the last part is, like you mentioned, paying attention to detail. So if people see that the trim is not done a certain way, or the paint is sloppy, they automatically think that in the back of their head that this is not worth what they're asking for, or they're automatically going to pick it apart, or they're going to look for other things that are negative inside the unit and let that be the determining factor. If I know that I've went through the property with the fine tooth comb, I make sure stuff is tight, corners are done, the trim is done a certain way, and I've given you sizzle features, it's like there's nothing else, there's no reason for you not to consider this building.
Exactly. And just on that point, the buyer of your last building, they're looking to buy one more from you. So we have them lined up already, which is great. But
you didn't tell me that, man.
So they're ready. But sure,
that's awesome.
They were under contract with one of your colleagues' buildings, and they ended up walking away. And it was something that I could see both sides of it. It was, I think he hadn't let the floors sit in the building before he put them down, so they had buckled a bit. And he said, "Listen, I'll refinish them." But in her mind, she was like, well, if this is a brand new construction building, if the floors are buckling right off the bat, what other things has he missed? And it might have been nothing. It might have been something. Yeah. And that everything else was good. The numbers were good. And I ended up having a backup buyer. He bought it. He got the rents same as 23, 24, 25. So the numbers were great. He was really happy. But that was a good example of a detail that ended up killing the deal, because she was like, well, if this isn't done right, what else was? And most likely nothing. It was everything was fine, but it was just that fear. Like when you get new construction, you do want to have all those little things. So I think you do such a good job. And I just went through a big rehab in my house, and my wife we didn't really talk about it, Sean, but it was great because she's a therapist, so she's not in the business at all. She doesn't do interior decorating, but she really ran with it. She felt like she had this. She was just up late at night researching, looking at styles, looking on Instagram with different things she could do, and she ended up doing such a good job that she's probably had 6 or 7 people ask if they could pay her to do interior decorating. And I know your wife Mia, doesn't she do interior decorating? Yep. So did she help you with some of the styles?
Yeah. So my wife is definitely a big. She's the cornerstone of the development as far as the layouts, the design. So I may come up with some things, but I definitely am deferring to her with getting her perspective on how this is going to all pull together.
That's so interesting, because I can see the difference between there's 5 buildings on the first 5 or 6 that were built at the beginning, and yours is unique. And one thing I like the way you said is the wow factor on the exterior. I've had conversations with George about this, and he said when he does new construction, he almost wants it to fit in, because he's thinking, well, I don't want to get hit on the taxes too hard, and he's got that approach. And we've had a conversation. I kind of like your approach. I'm like, no, it's new construction. Like I want to have like this being a centerpiece of the block. And what's so cool is when you have 5 or 6 new buildings in a row, yours stands out because you have that exterior. So I really like the idea of just popping those little things that differentiate you from everyone else. I think that's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, that's, like I said, that's my way of thinking. How do I set myself apart? And those wow factors, the exterior, giving you the wow factor when you open up the door, and one more to actually seal the deal when you're in there. That's been successful for me. And then paying attention to details overall.
I love that. Sean, so when do you still have your real estate license as well?
Yes.
You do. So what was the first thing you did many years ago? How did you get into real estate?
Funny story. I was working at a telecommunications company with who ended up being a business partner of mine. Is also a frat brother. And he actually attended, I don't know, I'm probably dating myself now.
It's okay. We're both in our 40s, Sean.
So you probably know, man. Russ Whitney. He's like one of the Carlton Sheet guys that did the late night infomercials, and then have you come out to the hotel for 3 days and teach you about real estate. So he went and came back the next day like, man, I went to this seminar, and man, these guys are making like somebody's salary in like one deal. I'm like, really? What? Like, they're in real estate. I'm like, okay, I want to go to the next one and I need to see what's going on. I want to understand how they're doing this. I went, I was sold, and that gave me the bug. So I'm like, man, if these guys are able to make this money, and I don't see anybody being different from me, because I'm a hustler, and if they can do it, I can do it. I just had that attitude. And so we ended up getting our real estate license and going to a couple of more events. And we came across another couple who was selling properties on a sandwich lease options. So it's basically finding someone who's in distress, or they want to walk away from their property. You're contracting with them to do a lease to own.
Oh, gotcha.
And instead of you leasing to own it, you find someone else that wants to lease and own it, and you basically get a finder's fee or a wholesale fee for the deal. and basically have them step into your shoes and they lease option it from the actual homeowner.
Gotcha.
So, and that required no money down. So that was our way of basically getting in the project. So I did about 3 or 4 of those. I did a rehab in Inglewood. That netted me about $25,000. And after I made that money, I'm like, this is definitely what I want to do. And I ended up getting laid off from the telecom company. That was kind of one of those blessings in disguise. Like, hey, I was like one of the top sales reps there, and the company ended up filing bankruptcy, and they shut our whole office downtown. And I'm like, I was in the middle of that rehab to make $25,000. And as soon as that happened, I made the money. I'm like, this is what I want to do. And it just kind of took off from there.
That's awesome. And then, so were you ever, like, I do mostly brokerage, and I'm just doing a bit of development on the side 'cause it's so much fun. Were you ever a kind of full-time broker, or was it more just brokerage to do your rehab projects?
It was more or less, I got my license initially because I thought that it was going to teach me how to invest. I never really wanted to be a real estate agent to sell properties for other people. I just thought it was basically they were going to teach me how to make money, how to put my rehabs together, understand how to find deals. But obviously didn't learn that. I had to learn that from outside sources. So to answer your question, I really just got the license to give me access to the information, the MLS and data.
Gotcha. So how did you, when you first, obviously I'm sure as you did many projects, you kind of had to figure it out as you go. But with the first couple, how were you finding the places to rehab? How were you figuring out what your budget would be? Was it really trial and error?
Trial and error. Yep. Trial and error. I'd attend a lot of seminars, people teaching courses, and that gave me kind of a benchmark of information to go off of. But it was definitely trial and error and going through the process to figure it out. And it took me a while to actually get it to a point where it was manageable, because Lord knows I still lost money on rehabs, and they definitely didn't make what I thought I was going to make on them. But in that process, though, I just wanted to just be involved in real estate in some capacity. Like I said, after we did the first deal, and I was partnered with my partner at the time that brought me to the event, we ended up getting he got a mortgage license, I got my real estate license, but I basically started doing rehabs and wholesaling. And we acquired probably about 15 properties doing that. And then the market tanked in 2008, because this was back in 2003.
Oh, wow.
Up until 2008. So we were doing pretty well. We had an office in Hyde Park. The cat's meow, man. Life was good, but that all came to a crumble in 2008, and I lost everything. And I went all the way back to staying with my mom. It was bad. But that experience back then, after that happened, it took me about 3 or 4 years to get back on my feet. I basically figured out that, hey, I've got the skill set. I know how to do this. I can partner with people that want to learn how to invest in real estate, buy, rehab, and sell, that have credit, have access to money. They just don't understand how to put it all together. And I put together a program to partner with them, teach them how to get access to money with their credit, lines of credit, personal lines of credit, business lines of credit. We would use that money to go and buy a property cash. And then I had a construction lender on the back end that would finance the construction part. And the value that I would bring to the table is the know-how on how to put the project together and walk them through, giving them a learning experience on how to actually put the project together. And then when I'm also a real estate agent, so I would list the property, sell it, and then we would take the proceeds, pay off all the debt, and whatever the net was, we split. So I did that for like 5 years. I'm kind of giving you the whole rundown.
Oh, this is awesome.
I did that for like 5 years, up until the point where I started doing a new development, where I got together with friends of mine that were also rehabbers, and we decided to buy back the block. And then that just happened, and here I am.
That's awesome. So, Sean, when you first got started, you're coming from a different business. You're doing your first rehabs. How are you finding the HVAC guy, the plumbing guy, the electrician? How are you finding those people?
Well, back then it was, I'm just, hey, you know how to do rehabs or HVAC? You know, I'll come and see you work. Fine, you're hired. And I didn't have any like rule of thumb other than this person told me this is what they knew how to do. I would go and check out their work. Like I went through my own trial and error or, process of elimination on how to hire. But now the process was basically going to other tradesmen. That's been successful for me, finding a tradesman that do good work, because 9 times out of 10 they know other tradesmen that do good work, or they're in the vicinity of a tradesman that hey, this is a good siding guy. And that's actually how I found my crew. So in the midst of me partnering and doing these deals with these clients, and I was still in the process of fine-tuning crews as I'm partnering with clients, but that also allowed me to build a crew, which is how I found them. So I was in the middle of a project, and my contractor at the time, he was slow. We're trying to get stuff done, and he was supposed to put siding on the windows, and I went over, visited my mom, and it was a guy doing siding on the windows next door to my mom's house. Doing a great job. I got his card, and like I said, the guy wasn't finishing my windows on my project. So a couple of weeks later, I call him. It's like, hey man, I need you to come and give me an estimate on these windows to cap them. So he came by, gave me a good price, did the work nice, and he's like, hey, I noticed you're doing a rehab here. Are you looking for some more people? I've got access to an electrician, a plumber, HVAC guy. I'm like, man, yeah, give me their name and numbers. Again, he's the guy that does good work and knows good work from other people. So the same contractor I'm having issue with doing electrical work. He was supposed to put the service in, didn't do that. Bunch of stuff he messed up on the electrical. So I call the siding guy. I'm like, hey, the electrical guy, what's his name again? I misplaced his number. Got his number. I called him up. His name is Oscar. Oscar came out, looked at it, put the service in the date, man, and even had ComEd to be able to come out faster and connect it. So I'm like, man, this guy really knows what he's doing. So he, like, hey, I see you doing rehabs. This is a nice product, but I got a crew I want to introduce you to. I'm like, man, absolutely. So he's doing a rehab on the west side. I go over to his house where he's doing the work, and the guys, man, they slammed this place. This place was beautiful. He's like, yeah, man. And the crew happened to be there, which is actually my head guy right now, Alejandro. So I meet Alejandro, and I was in the middle of doing another project, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give Alejandro this job. And the rest has been history. So that one instance of meeting a tradesman and having him introduce me to another tradesman basically led me to building up a crew.
That's such good advice, Sean, because if someone let's use the example of the last building we sold together. The buyer there, she's from out of state, she's from Boston. She doesn't know the first thing about anyone here. So luckily, I know what I'm doing. So I introduce her to a great lender for a great loan. I have a great inspector who can do the inspection of the property. I have a great property manager. So when we close, I can give it to the property manager. So it's finding competent people, and they're going to know other competent people.
Exactly.
And so that's the key
right there. That's the key.
So when we did the rehab for my house, I asked George. He said, I kind of do new construction. I'm not really doing like high end rehab for single family homes, but I have the guy for you. And he used all these guys, and they did it in 4 months, and it was painless, and they were wonderful. And my wife kept saying, we are so lucky to have a hookup, to know who to use, because you hear these horror stories. She's got friends. She's like, her one friend was messaging her and saying, I've been trying to do my bathroom, and you've done a whole house, 6,000 square foot rehab, and I'm still not finished on my damn bathroom. Like, who are you using? Like, who am I using? What's going on? This is not normal. I was like, yeah, that's a good crew versus bad crew.
Absolutely. Yeah. And how to find them.
Exactly.
How to find them.
What about in those early days? What was your biggest disaster of a rehab? Like the most painful issue with one or
man,
just
I had so many, man. It was... They were, yeah. Well, I had one. I put the same contractor that I had on the house that I just told you I had those issues with. I had him also starting on a 3-unit. And this was like one of the biggest projects that I had done. that size. And I had him go in there, and it took him like 4 months just to gut the place. And that was actually the project that I moved Alejandro to, but it was so much stuff that he had done wrong just in the demolition. It was a nightmare. Like, he tore out different joists that shouldn't have been torn out. It was just bad. And then the timing that it took him just to do that aspect of the work. I mean, demolition on average shouldn't take longer than a week, maybe 2, depending on the size of the building. And he was in there for 4 months, and I just didn't have the resources to basically, or the trust. Because that's another thing. Like you said, your wife's friend is upset about her bathroom, but I'm sure she's gun shy on who else to hire to come behind that person. Because that's the other thing is that when that person comes in, they're always going to find stuff wrong that the other person did and want to charge extra on top of that. So you really got to have someone that you can trust, and then you got to also be able to just fight through it and have the resources to get through it.
That's that element of trust. I always say it's like if I take my car into a mechanic, I don't know if he says it's $400 or $2,500. I have to just trust him because I'm not a mechanic, and it's the same with construction. Like if you trust them, the price is what it is, and if you don't, then they can just take you to the cleaners.
You just don't know unless you got some experience or you have someone there that's going to tell you, hey, this is not right. They're doing this wrong, or they're being a little egregious on the price.
That's so true. Yeah. So I went through a tough time, 2008, 2009 too. I was just leaving my trading company and I took a sabbatical where I was fighting and enjoying life. I made a lot of money just before that, and I lost a lot during 2008, 2009. It was a tough time. And looking back, I always laugh to myself. I'm like, man, if you hear that question, if you could have told your younger self something, what would it be? It's like, well, put a couple of $1,000s in Bitcoin when it was 40 cents, and just forget about it. But so you
probably wouldn't be having this conversation now.
Exactly. Well, maybe we'll be in the Bahamas talking. But Sean, do you, looking back now you're successful and you've had, you've built yourself back. What was your, when you had to move back home? Obviously, I'm sure you had some type of depression. But how did you get out of that? And what do you think now when you look back? I always think that sometimes the toughest periods of my life at the time today are the biggest blessings, because I had to grow, I had to learn, I had to overcome.
Yep. I would say definitely getting my mind right. Like personal development, I had to fall back heavy on that, with the whole belief system on that I can do it, that I'm going to be successful, just preparing my mind right, and then selecting something, finding that one thing that I'm going to do and just doing it. And then the other big part of that is surrounding myself with the right people that believed in what I can do, or that were doing what I wanted to do and could give me the resources to help me get there. That's I think were the biggest 3 things. Is that it? Didn't really have that. We're young, we're still trying to figure things out, and money is flowing, so you're really not listening to the core stuff. You're just kind of rolling with it and living life. But if you gotta solidify yourself in personal development and getting your mind right, and solidify your core group of people that can get behind you or offer you the information or the resources that you need to stay successful. I think that's basically what I would have focused on back then.
The good thing that at least you had done a lot of projects, and so you knew you could do it before that. Whereas I feel like if anyone that was maybe getting into this business and maybe they just did 1 or 2, and then 2008, 2009 happened, they don't really have the track record to fall back on. That must have been tough. So it's good that you had enough experience.
Yeah. So now looking back, what I do now is definitely, I'm obviously built differently, and I've got resources in place now than I did back in 2008. So I would know how to move a little differently, and I've got access to different resources now. So it will be different. So Yeah, it would just be different.
Well, one thing I really love about when we did our first deal together is I remember there's a dividing line for people that aren't familiar with Chicago, north and south. I think it's Cottage Grove, right? So if you're east of Cottage Grove, that was considered the good area, and if you're west, that was a bad area. And we were just a block west or something like that. And I remember when someone was interested in the building, and they asked me for rental comps, and I said, listen, I don't have any rental comps west of Cottage Grove above 2,000. I think even east, the buildings weren't too nice, but the new construction was something like 19 to 21 or something. So I was like, we're going to be setting the rental comps because this building's going to be beautiful. And there was that element of trust. And I was so happy that we ended up getting, it was $7,200 per month, which is an incredible comp for the area. And the investor was really happy, the buyer. But I love that idea of there's the people that look at the data and they say, okay, I can do this because it's been done. And one thing that I'm really proud of that's really cool that I'm associated with you is that we've been setting new data, new rental comps, whether it's the sale of the building, whether it's the rental comps. So I just think that's so cool is having the confidence to know that you can get the numbers and they haven't been set before. And it reminds me of when I first started in the business, like when I bought my first building in Pilsen. I think it was 7-8 years ago, and I remember the appraiser, it was $700,000 for a 4-unit, and the first appraiser appraised it at $540, and I said, you're crazy. And then the rental comps at the time, there was no rental comps anything close to what we got, and I was like, I think we can get these numbers, and we ended up getting them. And I just think that's one thing I'm most proud of, and I think it's so cool that you're doing is we're setting these rental comps and we're showing what's possible, as opposed to being a follower and being like, oh, this guy did this, so I can do this. But no, we're doing it ourselves.
Doing it, trailblazing, It's strategic, but definitely if the right elements are there, it's a strategy to doing it. And on top of having, most importantly, the confidence, you can get it done. So those comps over there were, like you said, $1,900 to $2,100 or whatever. But I knew with the type of product that we were going to put out there, the wow factor, those sizzle features, that was going to bowl to something.
I remember talking to that one developer, and I didn't mean to upset him, but he kind of kept that same business model. So one thing I love about you and some of the other developers in Woodlawn, that they're every building they're tweaking, they're changing. They're not just taking the exact same formula. They're keeping most of it, and then you're just making those little tweaks. And I think that those buildings we were talking about, that they weren't getting great rents. Number one, they were a bit smaller, and they were still doing granite when everyone else was doing quartz. They hadn't updated, they hadn't moved with the times. And I think that there's this thing in human nature where you feel like, okay, once I've got it, I'm just going to keep doing it. Like I'm not going to, I put the effort in to do it once, and then I'm just going to keep replicating the model. Yeah. And that's one thing I really like about you is like, no, I'm always tweaking it. You're always changing it.
Yeah, I like to stay ahead of the curve. I like to be the curve.
Exactly, yeah. No, I love that. And then what you were talking about earlier about, things like accent walls and things like that, that's, a lot of people do that with single family homes. But when they're doing multi-units, it's much more cookie cutter, and they're much less creative and much less, they don't have much attention to detail. And I really think that's an amazing thing that you do is treating a multi-unit like you would a really nice single family home, still caring about the details.
Yeah, because I know that's what's going to set me apart for right now. Until everybody kind of catches on, like then they're doing it too. Then I have to think about the next thing that is going to set my product. But I'm always thinking about what is going to set my product away from everybody else's, even the other developers that I work with. We kind of compete a little bit, which is fun, and that competition breeds, innovation and stuff like that. So I try to stay on the head of even that.
That's awesome. Can I ask you, do you, and obviously it's your personal business, so we don't have to get into it too much, but are you doing more private money or versus hard money in terms of lending?
Both. I am actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I was just on the phone today with a potential private money lender that we're looking to put together a private placement fund so that we can get as much money as we need to be able to build these properties. But, again, by this being my first development, first couple, you kind of got to go with what you can get access to. So I've proven that the model can be done, and that basically bold to bring in certain private lending to the table, but I'm obviously going to need more money to do that, and I have to use a construction or hard money lender to basically bridge the gap. but the goal is to actually be able to get access to private money. Is cheaper and it's a lot more flexible.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that's so frustrating, just seeing any type of lending, every time you do a draw, they're charging $1,500 fees every single time. They have to come out. It's hard enough anyway to you've got enough moving parts, and then you have all the extra fees and moving parts with the lender.
Yeah. So I try to get out of them as fast as I can.
That's so true. Sean, let's talk a little bit about 2024, the year of the Mamba.
The year of the Mamba,
that's
baby.
Something. So I'm not a big basketball guy, but I love the mentality of Kobe, the late Kobe. He had such a great mindset, and it was his approach was obviously to excellence in sports, but I think it carries over.
Oh, yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. So I obviously have only done a handful of projects, new construction, but I made a commitment that I want to build 9 new developments this year. I want to build them and sell them this year. So that's probably an aggressive goal. It's an aggressive goal for me for right now, seeing as though I haven't done that many new construction in a year. But I know that I could do it. So Mamba mentality is, be aggressive, relentless, hit your goals no matter what. And, as long as everybody is on the same page that's working with me, I think we're going to accomplish it.
And there's one thing we were talking about a bit before we started recording is the one thing about real estate is it's not there's some businesses that are a bit less dependent on the economic cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so you and I were both blessed to be busy last year, but there was something like, I think 50% of real estate agents did either 0 or only 1 deal in 2023. So it was a really slow year. And I know lenders that were taking like second jobs just to pay the bills. I have broker friends of mine who were so slow. They're like, man, if business doesn't pick up for me soon, I'm going to have to get a side job or do something. And then this year, my prediction is, the market is predicting rates are going to come down, but I think they're going to come down harder and more aggressively than we're predicting. And then because of that, you're going to have this influx in the market. All the people I have so many people that I've been communicating with the whole of 2023. They have a few $100,000 cash in their bank, the investors. They want to buy something, but they're just waiting, when is the right time? And there's not that many new construction buildings in Chicago. Like the inventories, there's not that many, right? And
very
so
shallow.
I've said to you, I said, listen, the Evans building we just closed on. I said, you could have 20 of these and I can get them all sold. The buyers are there for the product. If the product's good and the numbers work. So I think it's so important that when you, like 2024, when you have opportunity, that you maximize it. So I think we're kindred spirits in that we both see this as a big year. We both have big goals.
Absolutely. You said 20. I may be shooting too low. Maybe have to double that, man. 20 projects.
No, I love that because I just don't see an environment with the political pressure of the election coming and the bond market and the inflation numbers showing inflation's coming down. I just don't see a world in which rates aren't down significantly. And then there's no way that we don't see this increased buyer demand. And their inventory, I think, is always lagging. So I know quite a few new developers who've really, that maybe they were doing 9 is an amazing, you've already sold one, so that'll be 10 for the year. That's a very aggressive goal. A lot of people that I know in building new construction buildings, they're doing probably 2 to 4 a year, or so, that kind of number. And a lot of them have kind of pulled back a little bit because of the uncertainty of last year. So that's why I just think it's so good to be aggressive when other people are a little bit cautious. And it's not like it's foolish aggressiveness. It's if we're selling buildings when the interest rates are at the peak, like we went under contract in November when they were pretty much at the highs.
Sure.
So if you've got the buyers then, you're going to have the buyers when they're down 1.5% by the summer.
Yep. Yeah. And then on the flip side, the product itself, it's a 3 unit. So if for any reason I'm not able to sell it, I can always hold on to it and rent it out. And that's actually been my investment strategy, period. Overall, I've done very little single families within the past 7-8 years because I've always had the mindset of having multiple exit strategies. So I'm either going to sell the building to, an end buyer that wants to buy it, live in it, somebody that wants to rent it for income property, or if I can't rent it, I can refinance it and keep it and rent it out.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was my next thing I wanted to ask you about. How hard is it once you've built it and finished it? How hard is it to get whatever kind of financing you have to get a longer term loan and just keep it? Is that a pretty easy process?
Yeah. Well, I haven't done it because I've been fortunate to obviously sell, but the lender has offered the opportunities. The only caveat is the prepayment penalties that they invoke with that. At least the lenders that I've inquired if I had to do it. Some of them have like a 5-year prepayment penalty where, it's 5 points and then it de-escalates down as the year go past. But the interest rates are, and that's the other thing, interest rates are a little higher. But outside of that, that's the only caveat.
So would they take the appraised value and then they'd let you pull out 80%? Is that something like that?
75 to 80%. Yeah.
Gotcha. And you have enough equity in the buildings where that would be enough to pay off all the debts.
Yeah.
See, in that case, Sean, I mean, you could have 100 of these things. I just think that it's so great. Number one, you said you've never had to do it, right? Because we've always had end buyers. But to have that strategy, I think too many people get into real estate and they get in over their head and they're not thinking about those different exit strategies.
Absolutely.
And I think to say, listen, worst case scenario, there's some other type COVID event, global event. Suddenly, and even during COVID, I was still selling buildings. But if there was an event where there was just no buyers out there, what if I can always refinance it and just sit and wait? Because there's always going to be people that need housing. You're always going to be able to get renters.
Yeah.
That's kind of the fail safe.
And that's actually when you're going to get more renters, is when the market tanks and people are losing their houses.
Yes.
They got to have places to rent.
Exactly. That's such a great point. When the interest rates were so high and people couldn't afford to buy last year, I think that's one of the reasons we saw the rental market so strong.
Yeah. And you were saying that it's like, oh my God, the rents are like this, and they're constantly going up. Well, yeah, it's because people weren't buying; they were looking to rent.
So talking about setting the comp, Sean, those numbers we said, 23, 24, 25, 7,200 a month. By far, we set the highest comp with that. We got something like 20 applicants in about 8 or 9 days, and we took the best 3. So it wasn't hard. Like when the rental market's, that wasn't the summer. When the rental market's strong, it's these things, because like you said, if you have a good product, you can charge top rent and you're still going to have crazy demand. It's a really good sign.
God is good.
Let me ask you this, brother, because you and I both, I think, have something we're grappling with. I feel like we're both workaholics and we both love what we do. So it's not necessarily a negative thing, but we're also both juggling parenthood. Your daughter's 4, my son is 3, and we don't want to be having this conversation in 10 years where we have all these zeros in our bank account and we feel like we've missed out on our kids growing up. Do you think about balancing hard work with family time? Is that a struggle? Because that's something that I struggle with in this. In this business, it's not a 9 to 5. Where I think about my dad. My dad was a retired pilot, so it sucked when he was gone. He'd go for 3-4 days, and then he was home for 3-4 days. But when he was home, we didn't have cell phones then, but the home phone wasn't ringing. No one was bothering him. He was 100% present. He had nothing to do for work, and I just think that's such it's such a different time.
Yeah.
But imagine that will never happen to us.
Yeah,
when no one calls us for 4 days.
At least not right now.
Yeah. But we're constantly juggling that. The need to be dealing with people, because we always have multiple things going on, both of us, and then the need to be present when we're at home with the family.
Yeah. I would say my wife reminds me of that every day. And I would thank her for that. It's frustrating because, we're so caught up in the hustle and making it happen and getting it done and being pulled in the different directions and being able to manage all that. And you're right, family life can, slip to the side. But if you got a partner, which your wife is the same way, that's going to make sure that you are dedicating that time and you're putting a plan together to spend time with the family and be present. That's what actually was work for me. I'm not perfect at it. I work at it all the time. I'm reminded of it a lot, but I've got a understanding wife, a partner that's basically reminding me and helping me, guide me through that to make sure. It's like before I had my daughter, my wife told me, hey, okay, Aria's coming and I need you to start preparing because I don't want you to miss this time. Because my wife's a stay-at-home wife right now. We have a real estate or a general contracting business that she just piggybacking on off of our development. But, you know, in the beginning, she's all stay at home. And so she's like, yeah, I don't want to be the only one spending time with Ari and watching these precious moments and you're gone because you're tied up and you have to do certain things. So what I did, I committed, my Tuesdays and Thursdays are basically my my homework days, or days that I'm at home working from home. And it ends up being family day in some aspect, but the fact that I'm in the house and I'm there, that allows me to kind of have that presence with my daughter and you know, hang out or put work to the side that I'm working on, administrative stuff, and say, hey, okay, I can spend this time, and she sees me. So that's kind of actually what's worked for me, but I contribute that to my wife, helping me understand that I needed to put that in place. Because other than that, I'll be in the city every day working and trying to find hunting the next opportunity, talking to someone or being off, you know. And it actually works out. People, before, when you set those boundaries and you commit to the boundary, then the public and whomever else is working with you will commit to the boundaries. So everyone knows in my team or that I communicate with, well, Sean's not coming to the city. He's working from home. He'll be home on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So don't even schedule anything in the city because he's not going to be able to be there. He's typically not there. And, you know, actually that works. You know, it's funny to me because sometimes I can come to the city, but everybody knows that I'm working from home on those days, so they won't even ask me. So that's actually what's worked for me.
The one thing that, when I'm listening to you, Sean, I think that you and I, we both have good marriages. And so many of my friends who are single, I think they have this mindset, I'm going to achieve success, and then once I'm the man that I want to be, then I'm going to meet the woman that I should be. But really, I think it's about, I'm so much more productive, inspired, efficient, motivated because I'm in a good relationship. And we're teammates, you know, like we divide and conquer. So she focuses on some things, I'm focusing on other things, and together it's greater than the sum of the individual parts. Yep. And I really think it sounds like you have that same example. I just think it's such a good thing to say because too many of my friends, you know, they're waiting. It's like, listen, I know you're not where you want to be, but with the right woman beside you as a couple, like divide and conquer, you're going to get to the next level. Yep. And it sounds like it's the same for you.
Absolutely. I had that mindset in the beginning too. I think we all have growing up, or young men out here, hustlers, conquering the world. Like I just got to get to this point, and then I'm going to commit, and then I'm going to settle down and have kids. And, you know, you meet the right woman, the right person, right companion, and then it's like, okay. And it's still, I'll say for me at least, I was still kind of fighting it initially, but as things started happening, experiences, my daughter came along, and it's like, wow, you know what? Like we talked earlier, you mentioned earlier, I've got a different purpose now. My child is here. I just see life through a different lens right now. So, and it actually drives me in a different way. So I'm doing stuff for me, but I'm also thinking about that little one in the back of my head, like the example, you know, how I'm moving right now. They're watching me. So not only is that better for them, but it's actually better for me too, because I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
See, I really love that. And I want to talk about that too, because I remember when so we're both older parents, right? We both became parents a bit later. And I had friends that had kids that they were younger. And when I was married, but we weren't parents yet, you have a lot more free time and flexibility. And I would do these things, and I would have friends say these little negative comments like, oh, that's cool, I just saw you doing, you know, whatever it was. Enjoy it, because when you have kids, you won't be able to do that. And it was almost like life is going to stop once you have kids. Yeah. And listen, it's definitely harder. And yes, you do have less flexibility, but I don't think it stops at all. And I remember when I first became a parent, I remember I was still living in the city at the time, and I was on the lakefront, and I went for a long run up and down the lakefront. And I was just kind of with my thoughts, like kind of battling with that concept of, oh, is life over now because I'm a parent. And I remember getting back, and I remember having this incredible motivation. I'm like, are you crazy? Like, I'm so much more inspired now. But it's this thing in the air where it's just, they talk about you're going to get out of shape when you become a parent. You're going to have a dad bod. You're going to never be able to do anything fun. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't think it has to be that way. And I mean, it sounds like you're the same as me, but I feel like I'm thinking now about legacy and about what you said about was so nice about the example you set, because it's not about what we tell our kids, like, hey, do this, Maya, do this, Aria, or do this, Victor. It's about her watching you, and you have this great work ethic, and somehow you're juggling all this work and these big goals with also spending time with her. And by your real life example, she's going to see that. And the way you treat your wife, she's going to see like, no, like when she's dating, she's going to know how she should be treated because she sees you and your wife, and like all these little things. So for me, in order to be the best parent, you're going to be the best you, the best human. And I think I find that so inspiring, so I think it's I don't know about you, but I know I've changed. I would say I'm more inspired, and I think I'm also a better human. I'm a more compassionate and more caring person since becoming a parent.
Yeah, definitely. Ditto everything you just said, man. Yeah, definitely changed me I feel for the best. And I'm excited to set a good example for my daughter and just watch how that manifests. Because they say like, man, what if your parents gave you this when you were this age? Where would you be at? And just know that we're blessed to be able to put our kids in good opportunities and situations, and they're getting it early. So by the time that they get a certain age, knock on wood and everything works itself out, but they'd be so far ahead and just will be relishing at the person that they become. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
And also, like, your daughter's 4, my son's 3. I don't know about you, but my first memory was, it's a crazy story short. I grew up in the suburbs of London, and we were like downtown in the city, and I think I was about 3.5, so in between our kids' age. And I was wearing this bright red jacket, and I vaguely remember, like, I was in a store, and suddenly my parents weren't there. And the next memory I had is of my dad squatting down and looking at me in the eyes with tears running down his face. Because what had happened is, I guess my parents were very much hippie parents. Okay. So they had just left me in this store, 3.5 years old, and they had gone to a store next door. And apparently my dad had said to me, hey, just stay there, I'll be back. And he had told me, if ever I lose you, don't move, just stay there, I'll come and find you. I'm 3.5, right? So I don't remember this stuff.
Wow.
So I guess what had happened was, I don't remember this part, but I remember being lost in this store. And then I guess I had gone outside, and I was this little boy on the street, and a car had stopped, and they'd said, hey, are you okay? And I'd said, no, I'm lost. And he said, let me take you to the police station. So my dad, I guess, had come back for me, and he couldn't find me, and he was panicking, and he ran outside, and he said, has anyone seen a little boy in bright red jacket? And a guy said to him, yeah. He got in the car, and they drove off. And my dad is like, oh my God, I'm never gonna see my son again.
Whoa.
So then he had gone to the pre-cell phone days, obviously. He'd gone to the police station, and then that's my next memory was him just tears running down his eyes and like holding my shoulders, like, I told you never to leave. And
wow.
It was so crazy, because now I'm thinking, wow, I was at the age, because that was probably my first memory of my son now. So he's gonna remember these things. Yeah. These are gonna be some of his earliest memories.
That's a powerful story.
But it was wild. It's having these flashbacks, because I remember when I was 40, and it's before I think I became a dad at 41. And I remember when I was 40 having this feeling like, oh man, I'm behind the curve in life, because my dad had me at 30, and I remember when I was 10 we had this big surprise 40th birthday party, and I remember thinking, Jesus, like, I'm so behind the curve. Like, my dad was this established dad of 2 at the time, and my brother was 12, and here I am at 40. I still don't have any kids. I still feel like a big kid, So it really it's wild when you have those existential thoughts about life. It's like, oh man,
wow,
parenthood.
Yeah, parenthood. Wow, that's wow. That's crazy. Awesome story.
Let me ask you this, Sean. What do you think, just in life in general? What is some of the biggest struggles you're dealing with, or maybe like your biggest fear right now?
Wow, that's a good question. Biggest fear is not being able to provide for my family for any reason. Just making sure I have the means and that they're taken care of. Struggle. Honestly, I will say staying focused. Because there's a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of things that I still want to do. I'm older, but and time is time. I'll say that. But staying focused and staying focused.
Because that's a really interesting word, because I think a lot of people struggle with focus because of just what you said. We have so many things coming at us, and if you're a driven person like you, there's so many different routes and opportunities you can take, right?
Yeah.
So it's trying to figure out, I don't want to do too much, but I also want to maximize this time.
Right.
Is that what you mean? Like trying to figure out.
Yeah, and that's actually what I committed to this year, was being focused. So I have been pulled in a lot of different directions. Hey, I want to do rehab, and hey, there's this opportunity in real estate. I could do this opportunity. Because, I'm a competitive person, I'm a hustler, and I feel like I can do it all. But I had to commit to something that I felt that I can do and master, and that was going to take me to the next level fastest. So that's going back to what I told you I'm going to do is build the 9-3 units, and basically everything else will kind of fall to the side until that goal is accomplished, and I can work on the next thing.
So that's such a great point, Sean. So on the way here, I was actually listening to a podcast from a guy who was, I think he was 89. Very, very successful guy, but he's kind of 89. He just recovered from a cancer treatment, but he's thinking about, the end is near. And his big thing was he wished he had learned when he was younger to say no more, because every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And that's kind of what you're saying. Like
that is exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, if you're so focused, I'm sure, like you said, you do a really good job. We've talked about this before, about you market yourself well, and people are seeing these beautiful buildings go up quickly. So I'm sure you have so many opportunities. Hey, like Sean, you want to do this rehab project? You want to do, and it's pulling you in all these different directions. But then that's going to lose from your big focus, because doing 9, finishing 9 buildings and selling them all in 1 year when you've already sold one already, we're a month in, that's a big goal.
It's a big goal.
You got to stay focused.
Absolutely. So I would say that was still a struggle, but that is a struggle that I'm working on, and I think I'm on the right track.
And one more thing, Sean, you said very interesting about the ability to provide. And I never had these thoughts before, but recently I was thinking, man, what happens if something happened to me? And then maybe my finances are a bit of a mess because I over leveraged myself doing this rehab, and I'm doing all this stuff, and I don't want my wife to be stressed about that. And that's something that I've never thought before. But one thing, that contractor that I mentioned, who I ended up losing a lot of money with him, because during COVID, I had myself and some other friends were invested with him, and I'm a team player. So I was thinking, we've talked about this before. I know one of the reasons I really like you is we both have a big heart. So I was thinking, listen, like, I'm okay with losing my own money because I have the ability to, I know I can make it back. But I felt a lot of responsibility to some other people that were invested in the project. So I co-signed a lot of loans with him, and I got myself in way more trouble by trying to help. And we had something like 5 more buildings. He was in the middle of doing 5 more buildings, and he ended up finishing and selling 4. And then the last one, I think he was burnt out, and he's just like, screw this, declared bankruptcy, and we all lost everything. And it was really bumming me out, because I have that same feeling as you, where I want to be able to provide for my family and I want to give them a great life. But one thing that really gave me, I guess it was a mind shift for me, was if you and I say we had, just say we'd had the foresight, or someone had told us, hey, put $1,000 in Bitcoin when it was at nothing, and now we were worth $50 million. I don't know, that's going to have its own set of problems. Like, we're going to have incredible motivational problems, right? We have all these zeros to make. We don't have to do anything. We can just sit around. But also, like, I don't think that's, and this is something I've just been thinking about, I'd love to know your opinion, but I don't think it would be good for our kids to see us just sitting around. I think there's something about struggle and seeing us working hard and achieving. I think that's such a good lesson for our kids. So just by getting my head around that, I felt like it gave me a lot more happiness, knowing that, you and I are very driven. So both of us are not where we want to be. But it's happiness knowing that we're never going to have a problem with work ethic. If anything, we're going to have problems the other way. We have to rein it in, right? So by having that confidence that we're going to achieve great things, I'm okay knowing that I haven't done it now. I'm okay knowing that it's going to come later. And I think that's such a cool thing. And I think it's the same for you, where if we have that mindset, we can enjoy being where we are right now.
Sure.
When we're sitting with our kids, because we know it's going to happen. It's like we have Steve Jobs had this great speech at the university where he talked about the secret to his success was knowing that he was going to connect the dots in the future. He didn't know how, but he knew that he would do it. Yep. And I love that mindset. And it's something that I've really adopted, where I feel like you and I, the way we think, we're probably never really going to be happy, because we're always going to be driven to new things, and the goals are going to expand. And then once we have enough money, we don't need any more. We're going to be, I'm sure we're both going to be mentoring other people. We're going to be doing altruistic work, charity work, foundations, right? We're always going to be doing things. But just so knowing that we're never going to arrive, and it's something that I guess it just really changed me, because I thought I had to arrive and get to where I want to be happy. And then I realized that happiness is not having every zero in the bank account, having traveled to every beautiful country, having read every great book, having watched every great movie. That's not happiness, that's boredom. Yeah. It's like, I want to have those things to look forward to.
Right, because after you have them, then it's like, okay, what's next? You're always going to be chasing what's next. You gotta, and I had to learn this, I'm still learning this, enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
You gotta enjoy the journey.
And Sean, that is such a fucking cliche, but it's so true. That's the thing. It's like, it's the same. I tell the guys in jiu-jitsu, like, when you get a black belt, it took me 18 years or something to get my black belt. When I got it, it was anticlimactic, because it had been this thing I was striving for, and it was cool and it looks nice in the photos, but it was kind of anticlimactic, because it really was. It was about the journey. It's about the striving. And then when you achieve, I don't know about you, but every time I achieve big goals, I'm always satisfied, but I'm also, there's a bit of sadness to it, because I feel like, now it's what's next.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. And what that was a goal for me to do the one project. I mean, again, for a lot of rehabbers or people that are, rehabbing properties, it's like, man, the new construction is the next frontier. If I could do one. And now it's like, I've done that, and it's like, damn, well,
what's next?
What's next? Like, I did it. Like, okay, I want to do, now it's this goal, but it's the journey. Like, it's taking the processes, and this is something I enjoy doing, breaking it down and understanding how stuff works, and the relationships, and selling a property, just taking every step of that aspect in, and enjoying it.
And what's so cool, this is your first podcast, which is awesome, because you're going to do so many more, Sean, and we're going to do part 2 soon. And it's really cool, because I know, no one knows the future, but I have such a good idea, and I have a very strong feeling that this, looking back in many years, this is only, like, you've done great things, but this is only the start of what's to come. And to have that feeling is like, it's so, and for both of us, I really think.
For both of us, man.
And one of my favorite phrases, Sean, a rising tide lifts all boats. And I love the idea of you and I we're both growing our different businesses. And obviously there's a lot of overlap, but we've got great things to come in the future. And it's going to be really cool. And I'm going to really enjoy the journey. I really am.
I told you that, man. The future's not ready.
I really appreciate you, brother. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.